So welcome everybody to our Brick by Brick Builders Club session. And during each of these sessions, we take a deep dive into the technical and creative process of builder creators and innovators here in Decentraland. And so with that, I'm super stoked to welcome back Nico, the SDK editor, product manager for DCL Foundation, for another exciting session. In case any of you guys missed the first session, during that back in August, he went into portable experiences, smart wearables, and DCL cast demo. Definitely recommend you guys checking that out if you haven't taken a look. And here, let me paste that here in the chat for you guys in case you want to check that out after this session. That was a great one. So for today, Nico will be diving into the creation of our own smart items. And for those of you who haven't heard about this, recently the Foundation introduced smart items into SDK7 Editor. And this update has been a huge milestone, and now it's possible to create interactive scenes without any code. So smart items work differently from how they did back in the SDK6 days, and they are way more customizable, so you can do a whole lot more with them. So you can now easily create your own items from your own models without any code, which is super exciting. So with that, Nico, welcome, and excited to learn from you today again.
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. That's exactly what we're going to dive into today. So first of all, I want to show you like the basics of like how smart items work now, because it's a bit different. It does have a little bit of more, let's say, complexity to get started with some basic things, but then you realize that on the flip side, you get way more customizability. And like it just opens the door to so many more things than what was possible before with the old SDK6 builder. So what I have here is the Visual Studio Code extension for the session. I'm going to make my text a bit bigger because it surely doesn't look that big on there. So what I'm going to show today is stuff that is available both in the Visual Studio Code editor extension here and also in the web editor. So if you go to instead to the website builder.decentraland.org and go into the builder section, you're going to find exactly the same features that I'm going to show right now. The reason why I'm doing it through the, let's say, less friendly interface is that through this, I get a very nice advantage, which is I have bot reload. So whenever I make a change, I'm going to see it right away, which is sadly never been a feature of the web builder. Here, if I make a change and then I want to see it as a player, as an avatar, I'm going to have to manually reload, and I would just make the whole conversation a bit less fluid. But you can still do exactly the same things through that other medium. And it's a lot easier. It's a lot more approachable. You need to sort out a whole lot less things. But I'm going to do it through here just to make it more dynamic. So as I've shown before, you can click on this Open Inspector button here, and now we have the 3D drag and drop editor. And as always, I can add stuff and position it. And this is stuff that we already had. And I can use the arrows to adjust something, or I can change the values numerically here. And any item that I add, any normal item like this floor that I add here, or say this bookshelf, these are all entities that have components, and they have basically two components. The GLTF component, which tells me basically what 3D model to use. In this case, it's pointing to a path, and this is a .glb file, so it's a 3D model. And then there's the transform component, which tells me position, scale, and rotation. So through this, I can say that I rotate it 90 degrees, or I want to make it twice as tall, or whatever, and it changes those properties of it. And that's all normal items have, what we could call dumb items. Now, smart items have these things, but they have more stuff that goes with that. So you'll find that all smart items are in an asset pack called smart items with a little lightning icon here. And you'll see that there's quite a collection, but for now we have just a limited set of different features that you can do with these smart items. So there's buttons, there's doors, there's chests, and there's platforms. And then there's these others which are special. We'll get to them later. But there's like more coming. There's a lot more things that we want to do with smart items, but we started out with this limited set of possible features. So for example, I can add a chest, and I can add a door, and let's like quickly take a look at what these look like. Just like a different kind of door, just for the sake of it. And if I open a preview, unseen, and let's make it full size just to not be switching so much. We will just like interact with them using the default mechanics that already come with them out of the box. So, but by the way, one little thing that is kind of a new addition that wasn't possible before is that whenever I was, dealing with adding new 3D models to my scene or new assets of any kind to my scene, and I had a preview running, I would have to reload the preview every time I add a new 3D model, simply because like it wasn't, knowing of the existence of this 3D model until I did like a manual reload every time. And that was a bit of a pain. That's no longer the case. So you will see that while I have this preview running, I'll be adding new stuff and new models to my scene. Well, I never saved, of course. So there you go, I enable autosave so this doesn't happen again. And here we go. Like I basically just added new 3D models to my preview, and like I didn't have to manually reload, like it's already there. Here we have a door. I can open it and close it. I don't know if you're hearing the audio, but it's making a little noise as well. And the same applies to the chest, and the same applies to this door, which has the same sound as the old wooden door. It's not like the ideal, but we can change that easily in the future. Those are like the default behaviors. But what's really interesting is that I can configure things in crazy ways. And we're going to start small. We're going to start with an easy case. So let's say I want to bring in a button. I want to bring in this button. I want this button to open this door, for example, which is a pretty standard thing to want to do. So let's dive into what this button can do. As I mentioned before, all items have a GLTF component, a transform component that gives it scale, position, and rotation. And now we have two more components to deal with, the action and the trigger. And these are really what make a smart item smart. The action refers to all of the actions that the item can do. It's a list of things that the item can potentially do. The trigger is rather the events that make those actions happen. It's the things that trigger those actions into really happening. So like this is where some people might, have a little bit of a confusing time when you start using them. Once the idea sinks in, it's easy, but you might like occasionally think they wonder where something needs to be defined. So the actions are the possible things that might be doable by this item. The triggers are the actual triggering of doing those things. If that makes sense. So if we dive into the actions, we'll see that the button has two predefined actions. One is to play an animation. So the button, does like a little push animation. And so through this action, we are telling it to play that animation. And the other one is that it plays a sound, it does a little click sound whenever we deactivate it. So through this, we are just stating that this button is capable of doing those things. We're not saying when it's going to do those things. And that's the job of the trigger component. In this case, the trigger component has one click event, meaning that this will be triggered when the player clicks on this item. And when I click on the item, I'm going to call the two actions that I just defined above. So there's a play active animation and the play sound, which are the names that I assigned up here. So within one single trigger event, it's doing two things. It's playing the sound. It's also being active. It's also playing the animation. And I can click this plus sign and add a third thing. And you'll notice that this dropdown doesn't let me select what smart item I want to actually, play the action on. So these two default ones, of course, act upon the button itself. It's called danger button here. But if I wanted to, I could, refer to one of the other smart items in the scene. In this case, the sci-fi door, the vertical all the way door. And now I can select out of all of the possible actions that this door is capable of doing. I'm going to go with open. So now if I open the preview, and if it is reloaded already, I can click the button and open the door. Of course, if I click it again, it's going to open the door once more. Now we're going to soon dive into how we can make that that behavior a bit more complete, because of course I don't want to have the door just pop back into being closed and magically open again. But this is where things get a lot more customizable. So let's dive into the door itself. And again, there's the GLTF and the transform. There's the action component, the trigger component, and there's a third component here. The door also has a states component. And that's those are like the more advanced kinds of smart items, because with the case of the door, we want to be able to open it and close it, not just action the open action every time we click on it. So through the states, we can handle toggling between one state and another. We can go from open to closed and back. So the states component is just a list of possible states that the door can be in. In this case, it can be open and it can be closed, but I have absolute freedom to modify that. I could, for example, create a new state and say locked, for example. And now there's a third state for the door. Now, the existence of this third state doesn't do anything. I'm not going to change the behavior of the door just by adding a state, because like that, I could have written any word I wanted into the name of the state, and the scene is not just going to know what I meant by that. But now I can use this in different fun ways to change the behavior of the door so that it is consistent with the states that I defined here. So if you go into the actions of the door, you'll see that we have things that are similar to what we saw on the buttons. So there's like the play sound, which plays the sound. You have the play the open animation, which runs an animation that is called open, that is on the 3D model. And there's a close animation as well. There's another action. So there's an action that plays a sound, an action that plays an open animation, an action that plays a close animation. But then there's also these set state animation actions. These set state actions basically change the state that we just saw just now. So in this case, there's an action that can change the state to open. I can see here in this drop down the different possible states. So there's open, closed, and I just added the locked state, and now it's a possibility to select here. And there's a second set state action that selects the closed state. So again, through this, I am just selecting different words. They don't necessarily mean anything to the behavior of the door until I map this to different things. But now in the actions, I defined that the door is capable of changing between one state and another, whatever those states mean. Then the final piece of the puzzle is that in my trigger, I have an on-click behavior that happens whenever I click on the door, which doesn't just do an action. It doesn't just go for activating the open action. It first checks a trigger condition. In this case, it checks that the state is closed. So if I click on the door and the door is in state closed, then I'm going to set the state to open. And then I have a second trigger event which looks the same but does the opposite thing. So this other second trigger event also reacts to when I click on the door, but when the door is open, I close it. So this can be a little bit dizzying, but it is pretty simple. It's when I click on the door and it's open, I want to close it, and when I click on the door and it's closed, I want to open it. It's just simply that. So that is why whenever I click on the door directly, It opens, and if I click on it again, closes. And I switch between those two states, and the action that gets triggered whenever I click on the door is gonna depend on what is the state of the door at that time when I clicked on it. I hope that's clear enough. I hope I'm not getting you dizzy. Let me know if I need to clarify anything, because I am just now going to start adding more things into the mix. So I can, for example, add more, or rather, let's before I dive deeper into this, let's look at a more complete example. I'm going to show a really great example of what a scene can look like with smart items. I'm going to run this other scene, which is already pre-built, and I didn't build it myself. This was built by Juanca. It's one of the old-time devs in the team. And yeah, like he made a really nice example that I think illustrates a lot of the power of the stuff you can do with these tools. So I'm loading this here. And this is a scene that includes a lot more fun and creative interactions than just simply, activating something with a default behavior or just opening a door with a button.
No, very cool.
So far, how understandable are you finding this?
Well, I've done a bunch of this
in
like Unity based, like Reactor based kind of interaction, so I understand the basics myself, and
right.
I think it's definitely nice and clear, the new UI, how you can do it. But if anybody in the audience has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. If you want to, you're welcome to join us on stage, or if you have questions, you're welcome to add them to the chat as well. But to me, it's very clear because I understand the concepts, but maybe somebody who's newer to the basic concepts, it might take them a little bit, but it's being recorded and I've zoomed it way in, so anyone who's gonna see it can see everything clearly. So, but yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Also, by the way, we have docs about this, and
Yes.
I plan on making a couple of shorter tutorial versions of a couple of these things as well in the near future.
Wonderful.
But yeah, you go to docs.decentraland, you'll find that covered in plenty of depth here. Yeah, the smart items page. You'll find all of the possible actions and things to find here. And I'm going to dive deeper into these now. But before I do, I want to show you something more exciting and more of a finished product.
Awesome.
Whenever it finishes loading. If that doesn't help, that I have. Okay, yeah, it worked. I was about to close my other preview because that surely doesn't help. So in the scene, if I jump onto the boat, you'll see that the boat starts moving on its own. I'll then explain how that magic can be done. If I go up to the store, I'll see that I can't open it. It's default action for clicking and opening the door is configured differently because I need a key to open the store. So I can look around and I can find this shovel. I click on the shovel. I suddenly have it equipped on my wearable, and now it's it's joined to my hand bone. So whenever I do any emote, or well, I was hoping for the other hand to move, but the other point. And now I can use a shovel to dig through this dirt, and I find that there is a treasure chest. I can open the treasure chest, and if there's a key inside the treasure chest. Now I have my key on my head, and
That's cool.
here, and now I can open the door with a key. And now here I have a chainsaw, and this chainsaw is not a smart item, and it's not even an item that you can find in the builder. Like this is something taken, I'm not sure where from. I guess from God, what's the name of the site? Somebody.
One of the
Where do people? One of the places where you usually get free
low
models.
poly pizza. Poly pizza is one fun one, and there's a bunch of 3D like GLB downloads for free. Oh, Sketchfab, yeah, Lestrom said.
Sketchfab is probably yes, probably Sketchfab. So I can click on this, and now I'm carrying a chainsaw.
Oh, cool.
And I don't think you can hear
It's a
it.
big chainsaw.
And now that I have this chainsaw, I can cut through these logs. And notice that I need to click on them twice. And now I'm done. I can leave my chainsaw here. I'm no longer hearing it. I jump on this raft and click the lever to into the sunset. And notice that the lever and this little motor spins as well, and that everything is part of the boat and it all moves together. Cool. So that's a nice little example of the kind of things you can do. But as I was showing with the chainsaw, like any item can be made a smart item, and that's where things become a lot more fun. Yes. So for example, I can say grab something from, so for example, I might say that I want this door to open only in case the generator is on, because like otherwise there's no power to open this door. And I can just like pretend this thing here is a generator. Why not? And this is of course a regular item. It's not a smart item. It just has a GLDF and a transform component, but I can easily change that. Like I can close this. That's clutter. So it's, what's the name of this? It's a computer wide. That's the name of the item. I can click here and add component. And suddenly now we can give it new components to make it a smart item. Cool. So for example, I can give it a states component and say that now it can be either on or off. And I can say I should set the off to be the default. So it will start being off and it won't be on unless I do something to interact with it to change that state. So now I can add another component. I can add actions component. And through this actions component, I can do set state. So I can call this action turn on. So when I call the turn on action, I'm going to set the state to on. And while we're at it, we can also do turn off. And I will set the state to off. So again, this is one of the trickier parts. Like so far, I'm not turning this on or off. I'm not providing a way to turn it on and off. I'm just stating that it is possible to turn this on or off. The next step to actually make it turn on or off is to add another component, a triggers component. And in this trigger component, I can add an on-click action so that this same computer, when I turn it on, so when I click on it, I call the turn on action. And if I go up, I will see that this turn on action sets the state to on.
Nico,
and of course, it's
Lastrom just asked if did you already define those set action items?
So yes, there is a the set action items. I didn't predefine anything in the scene. Like I'm starting from scratch. Where can I read the chat, by the way?
Right here. If you click in the upper right, it says show chat, and it can open up that little window.
Right. There we go. Thanks. So I before I can call a trigger, I need to first create it as an action. Yes. I can like if so for example, if I didn't have this turn on action defined from the start, I wouldn't be able to change the state any other way. Yeah. I hope I understood the question well. Otherwise, let me know. I don't want to get you busy because I'm about to add a couple more steps to this whole thing. So
hey Nico, hey, it's Lasham. Just really quick on the actions part up there. If you scroll up where you have select action on the right, that drop down.
Yes. Oh, right.
Is that preset?
Yes, this is all predefined, and for now we can do only these actions. There will be more being added, but as a content creator, I'm not able to add to this list of possible actions. Okay. By the way, some of these actions are only visible when a certain component exists in the item. I will cover some cases where you won't see a certain possible action until you first add a component that is relevant to that action. But I'll make that clear in a few minutes. But basically, these are the essential possible actions that I can do, like as a bare minimum. And so I made it so that now clicking on the generator sets it on. One thing I'm missing is some kind of feedback, right? Because it's kind of not clear to the player that clicking on this thing did anything at all. So at the very least, what I can do is add some sound. I'm going to add a new action and play sound, and we'll select play sound as my action. And I mean, if I wanted to do this properly, I would maybe go to freesound.org and look for some sound that sounds like a motor starting or something that kind of, resembles what you would expect from turning on a generator. But to keep things simple, I'm gonna just borrow something from one of the items that I already put in my scene. Because this danger button comes with its own sound, and I can just use that. So I can just drag from here, and now the play sound is using the same sound as my button. It was as easy as dragging it over, but I can also import my own files from my local folder. This is true both in the desktop editor and on the web editor too. I can do exactly the same and import my own sound files if I want to, just as I can import my own 3D models. So now when I click on the generator, I will hear a sound and it will be set to on. What I'm missing now is to actually do something that makes the state of the generator relevant, right? So I wanted to make it so that when I click on the button, the door opens only if the generator is on. I can do that with conditions. So if I go into the trigger action of the button, I have this trigger event where if I click on the button, I play the button's own animation sound and I open the door. But instead of directly doing this every time I click on the button, I will come here and add a trigger condition so that what happens here is only really carried out if this condition is correct. The condition evaluates to true, let's say. So I can pick the computer and verify that the state is on. Now, if the state is off, I can click on the button all I want and nothing will happen. And this will only happen if the state is on. Let's try that out and make sure that it worked as expected. So if I click on the button here, the door is not being open. Now if I come over to this machine and not hear the sound though, maybe that's my bad, let's see. But now that I activated the machine, I can open the door. We still have to solve this problem where the door just opens from scratch every time. And how we do that is with states. So I can add a second condition so that the door only opens if the door is in the closed state. So I can come here to the conditions, I can hit plus sign, and I have a second condition. And when there's more than one condition, you'll see that we get this new drop down here, which basically tells me, it lets me select if I want these conditions to happen as an and or as an either or. So let me first put the condition on and then I'll explain how that works. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that the door is in the state closed. So if the door was already open, this won't happen. But now I need to pay attention to these two variations, these two different ways in which conditions can work together. So what I want is to use the and, right? So I want to make sure that these actions only happen if both conditions are true. So the door needs to be open and the generator needs to be on. If I instead use the or condition, I only need one of the two to be true. So if, say, the door was closed, but the generator was off, that would still count. Or if, on the contrary, the generator was on, but the door is already open, that would also count. And that's definitely not what I want. I want to make sure that both conditions are true, and only then I want to be able to carry out the things that I defined in this action. So let's go for it again. I want to open the door and I can't because the generator is not on. So I'll come over to the generator, activate it, and now I can open the door. And if I want to open the door a second time, nothing will happen because now the second condition is not being, fulfilled. Now the door's state is not closed as I set here. Now the door state is open, so that won't happen. So another thing that I think is rather a good practice rather than a necessity, but like we've seen through building these smart items that it makes a lot of sense, is that instead of, before I dive into that, of course I can, use the button to open the door, but I can just as well just go up to the door and open it manually. And that's because the default behavior of the door is still, configured in the door. I still have this action on click that is part of the default behavior of the door, and I don't want that because otherwise, why bother with a button if I can just walk up to the door and open it? So I want to get rid of this action just so that there's a bit more playability to my scene. I'm going to remove the unclick event and also the second unclick event, because remember that the door has two unclick events: one that opens the door if it's closed, and the other one that closes the door if it's open. So I want to get rid of both of those. But you'll see that the door has a bunch of actions, right? It has the set state actions that we discussed before. It also has the play sound and the animation actions. And one way I could deal with the door is that I could, like I did with the button, have like one on-click action that calls a bunch of things, right? The button's on-click action plays a sound and animation all in one place. And that's good enough. But what we do with the door instead is we do it in a slightly more less direct way, but that it makes it easier to interact with other items. So let me explain what that means. So I just deleted the actions. I'm going to grab this other door, which I haven't changed at all, just to explain the default setup of any door. So the door has, as I mentioned before, a trigger event where when you click on the door, you check that the door is open, and it's open, you close it. Now, this close action that I'm calling here, this close action is I go up to the actions of my door, is setting a state. It's changing the state of the door to closed, but it's not actually running the animation or the sound that I see whenever I interact with the door. It's just changing the state. So like one thing I could otherwise do is within the same action, the same trigger event, I could add more actions, and I could also tell the wooden door to play a sound, and I could tell the wooden door to play the close animation. And that would also work. That would be perfectly fine. The problem is that if I were to do things in this way, when I come to the button and I want to just like get the button to open the door, I would also have to add these other actions to the button, because otherwise, the button is just changing a state. It's not changing the it's not making the animation play or the sound play. Now, the way that we make that simpler for using a button or something external is that we add a new kind of trigger, which is the on-state change event. So just as we have the on-click kind of event, we also have the on-state change, and we have a few others. I'm going to cover those soon. But the on-state change basically is something that happens whenever the state changes. And the state can change for a variety of reasons. And that's why I'm, splitting the logic of this so that whenever the state of the door changes for whatever reason, for whether it's because a player clicked on the door or because the player clicked on a button or because some timer finished or whatever thing I want to make the door close, I will have the door run the things that closing the door entails. So thanks to this trigger event, whenever the state of the doors changes and the state of the door is open, I want to play the animation that opens the door and play the sound that opens the door. I hope I didn't get you dizzy with that, because I probably didn't explain it the best possible way. But what I'm able to do through this is I am able to keep the whole behavior of the door accessible through one single action, rather than having to run all 3 actions that I would have to otherwise do. And thanks to that, with a button, I can just tell the door to change the state for this action, and I don't need to explicitly tell the door to also play animation and play a sound. The door itself knows that when the state changes, it also has to do those things. So let's deal with another nice little example. So, for example, suppose that I want to grab some gems and make it so that these magical gems make the door open. So let's say I put these 3 gems here, and these are of course regular non-smart items, but I can make them smart by adding components to them. So I'm gonna give this a component, and I'm gonna give it an actions component, so that whenever I click on the gem, so whenever I click on the gem, I'm going to do a set visibility action so that it becomes invisible. And through that, I'm going to simulate the idea that I'm picking up the gem. Actually, rather than setting that up 3 times, I'm going to create just one of these. This one here. I'm going to delete the other 2, just so that instead I then duplicate this one, and I only have to deal with it once. I'll explain how that behaves in just a minute. So I'm going to grab this regular door, and I'm going to give it a new component as well. So the idea is that I have to pick up 3 gems, right? I don't want the door to open as a result of just picking up 1 gem. I want the door only to open when 3 gems have been picked up. And I can do that kind of behavior through a counter. So a counter is similar to the state, but it stores a number. In this case, the counter will start in 0, and I'm going to increase this counter every time that I pick up a gem. So again, I will add a new action so that this gem has 1 action, which sets it invisible. I'm going to add a new action and call it counter, and let's select the action. This is right here. That's my bad. So I need to create this action in the door, not in the gem, because the door is the one that has the counter on it. So I'm gonna add a new action at the end of this list. And remember that I mentioned that there's some actions that appear when certain components exist on the entity. Now that this store includes a counter component, you will see that there is an increment counter, decrease counter, and set counter action. In this case, I'm going to call the increment counter action. And what this does, whenever this action is called, is that it sets the counter to it adds 1 to the counter. And now through my gem, I'm going to, so I have so I have an action that makes it invisible. The next step is to add a trigger to my gem. And through this trigger, I'm going to, when I click on the gem, set the gem, activate the pickup action so that the gem becomes invisible. And also I'm going to add a second action, which will refer to the wooden door and increment. So now every time I pick a gem up, the counter on the door will be raised by 1. So now I can add a couple of these gems, right? I can duplicate this gem, and these copies of the gem will have the same configuration that what I just set up. Duplicate, and now there are 3 gems. And by the way, like all of the triggers and actions and things keep pointing to themselves. So like it's not like I pick up one gem and the others become invisible. Each gem will affect its own visibility. But now the door will be increasing its counter every time that I pick up a gem. And the final step of this is to do something with that counter, right? For now, I just have a number that goes up. What I want to do is I want to open the door when the number reaches a certain value. So with that, I can add a new trigger event. And again, you'll see that thanks to the counter existing on this item, there's a new possible action I can trigger. Besides the on click and other ones, I have the on counter change action. And through the on counter change action, I can react to to the changes in the value of this counter. I need to add, I need to add a condition for this to actually, react to a certain value, because right now, every time that the number of the counter changes, this event is going to happen. And like I only want this event to happen whenever this counter reaches 3 or more. So what I'm going to do is add a condition that where the wooden door counter equals 3, I'm going to open the door. Otherwise, I'm not going to do nothing. And yes, now I have to actually tell the door to open. And there we go. So now every time that the counter of the door changes, this event is going to happen, but it's going to check the condition. And if the counter is less than 3, then nothing's going to happen. When the counter equals 3, then the door is going to open. Let's see that in action. So come here and pick up these gems. And when they pick up the third gem, opens. So that's another fun way you can mess around with these things. Of course, as I mentioned, you can also make any item smart. You're not limited only to the smart items that or the regular items that come in the builder. I can also import my own things. So for example, let's look for some old 3D model from some random old scene.
I'm curious, let's say if in that gem game, like if you wanted to do like a little, some games have little counters on the lower right. How would that be possible with another smart item, or just
not just yet?
Yeah, I mean, okay.
Not just yet. I mean, for now, there is no actions that have to do with the UI.
Okay.
We'll be working on that fairly soon, I hope. But yeah, you could work. No,
maybe you could do like a weird hack, like
not without code.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could have, I don't know, like 3 stones in the corner.
I was thinking
and,
that.
Have
each one revealed. That's a lot of work, though.
Yeah. But we will make it so that there's nicer alternatives, and I think we're not so far away from that.
Awesome.
I'm looking for some old scene that would make sense with this. It's the good old puffer scene. This is like a classic example that I really like.
That I remember.
Oh, sorry. No, sorry. This is a GLTF with an external image. I think I'm not able to import these just yet. verify that, but I think that right now for this import to work, I have to both files need to be one. I have to fit everything into a single file. But what I can do is I can manually paste this in my project folder. Let's do that. So since I'm with the desktop version of the editor, I can just do it in a more manual way. So I'm in this folder with my brick, assets, just paste model. Great. So I should now be able to use my model through this folder. And probably I need to refresh because I'm not seeing this in the right folder. In the right folder. And close this and open it. So I'm basically trying to add stuff. There we go. Great. I'm gonna add my buffer, and if I remember correctly, it was pretty big, bigger than my scene by default. But I can easily set the size to something smaller.
Oh, not hearing well, like a robot. I can hear it. I hear it well. I wonder. Maybe try reloading too, Fez. Fez is having issues hearing.
Oh, sorry about that.
You sound clear to me, though. I know some people are having trouble loading too, but I'm recording this, so just in case anybody has any issues, it's being recorded. So far, knock on wood, it's good on my end.
Okay, great. Why is it that not seeing the buffer? I'm hoping that maybe I have a nicer version of that same 3D model where I'm should have otherwise I can just do some other scene. Doesn't need to be the buffer fish. Yeah, here we go. Okay, there's a sorry about that. There's a single file version of this which should be possible to import via the UI. That should be easier. Oh. Stupid me. I was trying to drag it into the UI, and no, that's not how it works. I should know better. So documents. And should be here. These are just my chaotic folders that I've gathered over the years.
I'm glad I'm not showing you my folders. My folder system is terrible.
So now buffer.glb should work. There we go. Yes. So of course it's pretty damn big. I don't want it to be all this big. Little friend of mine. Here we have 2 of its size. So probably let's make it even smaller. Let's make it 5. So in an old classic tutorial, I had gone over how you can use code to make the buffer fish puff up when you're near it and then deflate. Now I'm going to do this entirely without code. This is where you can do really cool magical things with smart items. So the buffer fish, of course, could have a couple of actions. That's just like I did with the generator. I'm going to start by giving it a couple of states. So I can say that the default state is how can I call this? So shrimpy. And it is perfect.
I like your naming convention. You're like me.
It's clear enough to me.
It's clear to me.
So what action can be to, I don't want to get the states and the actions mixed up, so I'm not going to call it puff up also, because otherwise it's going to be confusing if we're talking about the state or the action. So, or you can say large. And it's not even a tween component. I didn't cover these just yet. So tween actions, sorry. So tween actions change change something about the transform. So they either change the position, the scale, or the rotation of something over a period of time. So in this case, rather than move item, I'm going to pick scale item, and I'm going to start at the. So a tween always has three things, right? Or three basic things. It has an initial state, an end state, and a duration. The initial state is always going to be the actual current state of the item. So I'm not going to set anything for the initial state. I'm just going to take, whatever scale the fish has right now. But for the end scale, let's go with 0 to 0, 3 maybe, and 0, 3, so that it's a little bit more wide than it is long. And the duration in this case is 1 second. Maybe let's stretch this a little bit and go for 3. And the final thing, which is more optional, is a curve type. And this is something that I've always enjoyed playing with a lot. But for now, I'm going to leave it at linear. I'm going to explain the basic mechanics, and then we're going to play with this. So the fish can either enlarge, and it can also shrink. So let's create a second action. Shrink. And again, we're going to create tween, and it's going to be a scale item tween, and the end scale is going to be 0.05, and let's also make it a little bit skinnier, 0.03. I think I have the axis right. I might be messing up the axis. We'll see in a bit. Yeah, let's leave linear for now, and let's make the shrinking a bit slower than the puffing up. Let's say it takes 4 seconds. Actually, let's make the puffing up faster. Let's make it so that it puffs up in just 1 second, and then it slowly, loses size. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a trigger component. So that now when we click on the fish, it's going to do the, so buffer, that's the name. We can change the name, by the way. Let's call it just buffer.
Lastrom says great stuff, and he has to go, but says thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so sorry about that. We're approaching the hour.
No, we can go longer. It's no worries. Go for it.
Okay. Sure. I'm happy to take. I mean, I don't plan on showing a lot more, but I want to at least finish the example.
Oh yeah, for sure. Keep going.
Really nice one.
Malway went 5 hours just to give you an idea of how long you can go if you need to. Yeah, he was hardcore.
Okay, good to know. That's really a lot of commitment. Wow. So yeah, I can't afford to stay all that long, but I will stay like 20 more minutes or something.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Thank you, Nico.
Of course, I'm enjoying this. So I just added a trigger to the buffer fish, right? So as you recall, the actions are all about what things the fish can do potentially. Now what I want to do is use a trigger for those things to actually happen. So I want to make it so when I click on the fish, the very same fish does the enlarge action. By the way, weird that it's still buffer.glb and not not buffer without the glb, as I just renamed. Is it still? Oh, well, now it just got renamed on its own. Great, awesome. That's good to know that these things auto adjust the names so that if I were to rename something, I'm not breaking dependencies. It's gonna figure it out on its own. Okay, so now if I look for the fish and click on it, by the way, it's a bit dark. Let's set the time of day so that it's not nighttime. I don't know how well you can see that. Set a fixed dynamic time, and yeah, right, now stay there. And if I click on the fish, it goes
that's
pretty
awesome.
damn big, more than I wanted, but you get the point.
That looks great.
And I can change these properties here. So 0.2 is way too much. Let's go for 0.1, for example, and maybe. So I said that these two x's would be a little bit more, so maybe 0.1, 2, and I hope that's about right. Oh wait, 0.1 is maybe way too small. If the default is 0.5, I'm actually shrinking it and not enlarging it. So go for like something subtly bigger, maybe 0.7 and 0.5, something like that. That sounds about right. And let's make it a little bit slower. Let's make it 1.5 seconds. Oh, I can't use decimals. Right. That's something to take note of. It would be great to be able to use decimals. I'll make a note of that. So let's make it 2 seconds. Okay, so now if I interact with my fish, it should be a bit natural. Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
That works. Better. But it's good. So I'll add another action. I don't know if you could hear sounds, but I think it's pretty essential that we hear also sounds when we're dealing with the fish. It's like half the fun is to hear the fish, blow out wind. So in this old scene, I had this deflate sound file that I will be, so I can add the file with this. So from here. And for present, and then my fish is here, and I should be able to import this web file. Okay, so now if I check out my files here, I have the deflate.web file here, and so I just defined an action that so I have 3 actions that I defined, right? There's the enlarge, there's the shrink, and there's the play sound. But actually, what I'm not doing is I'm not changing the state. I'm just when I click on the fish, I'm just making the fish play the tween. Mm-hmm. And really, what I really should be doing is I should be changing the state so that then when the state changes, the tween occurs. As I do with the doors, right? Because you will see then that I want to then be able to also make the fish puff up through other actions. And it's a lot cleaner to directly change the state and make the fish handle whatever that change in state means internally. So what I'll do so instead of I'm missing one thing. I'm missing defining an action for changing the state, because right now I have as you saw, I have these 2 possible states. I need to define an action that switches from one state to the other. Otherwise, like you don't have a way of changing the states. So I can put a set state set to.
So you'll be able to change from puffy to shrimpy, right? And then to change between the 2.
And so I need 2 actions. One to set it to shrimpy, and one to.
I was thinking that same thing. I'm like, I wonder how you can go between.
I probably should have covered that before I dived into more things, because I covered the state and then I went off into other things. I should have told the whole story of the states before I dived into more. So when you click that now, instead of making it large, what I'm going to instead do is I'm going to set to puffy, and I will make it so that when the state changes and condition buffer state is shrimpy, I wanted to the buffer to play the enlarge action.
Okay.
And also, while we're at it, we also want to have another action, which is on state change. When the contrary happens, when the buffer's state is off. No, actually, sorry about this the other way around. When I set the state to buffed up, I want the things that have to do with that state to happen. And when I set the state to shrimpy, I want it to go with the opposite direction. I want it to shrink. Great. And also when it goes into shrimpy, I also want to play the sound. So buffer and play sound. Now, right now, I only have a way to make the buffer fish large. I don't have a way of making the buffer fish, decrease size. It would just, stay large. Let's do this in a more fun way. And actually, I just realized that there's a very important smart item I haven't covered just yet, which is the trigger area. And this works just like in the old SDK6 builder. And what's nice about this is that we have a visible orange area that I can stretch. And basically what this does is that whenever the player enters this area, I can trigger things. And when you leave this area, I can trigger other things. So I'll roughly put this around the area of the buffer so that, it's like the buffer is reacting to your proximity. And this trigger area is a lot like a button. It comes with trigger actions, but of course it doesn't have any sound or any default things because it's meant to be a subtle thing that as a player you don't notice directly. You only notice like the effects it has on other things. So the player enters area. I want the buffer fish to set to puffy, and when the player leaves area, I want the buffer fish to set to shrimpy. So now the fish will be always, defensive until I walk away from it.
That's awesome. I like that. There he is.
When I step away from it, should be seeing it. Oh, well, it grows every time I click on it. Interesting. I shouldn't be having that happen, and I can prevent that from happening also. The following way. So if I select my fish, which is it's hidden right now, but I can select it through here. Remember that I had this. This one click. One thing I can do is I can add a condition so that when you I only set Buffy if it wasn't already Buffy. So if state is shrimpy, then clicking it will set it to Buffy. Otherwise, I'm not going to do anything by clicking on it. In that way, I'm avoiding this double activation. And I should do the same with the trigger area, right? So when the player enters area, I'm going to add a condition so that when the buffer fish state is shrimpy, I set it to Buffy. If it already was Buffy, I don't want to set the Buffy again because I would make it enlarge a second time. And these apparently, add onto each other. And the same would apply here. If the buffer fish state is puffed up, I will set it different. Right? Yes, that makes sense. Now, the fish wasn't exactly working as I expected, and I think we have set something wrong here. Definitely a possibility. So when there's a state change and the buffer's new state is puffed up and enlarged, and when the new state is shrimping, I shrink and place out. and default in the shrimpy state. And sounds good to me. Maybe I was just using it. No, it's not actually when I woke up to shrimpy. Okay, so wait a minute. It's not weird. Maybe the area is not tall enough. I don't think that's
Yeah, I was wondering about the tallness of it, if that affected it too.
Shouldn't. Like in the past, like it was a bit trickier. Like it wasn't about, the players, and like it wasn't about any part of the player entering the area. Like really, it was about like the player's heart entering the area. Like there was a central coordinate that was like what we were really evaluating. And so like if you just your feet were in the area or just your head was in the area or whatever, it wouldn't really trigger. But now that works differently. Now we're checking up like a whole volume. It's a whole cube that pretty much covers the volume of the player, and that should work. There we go. So yeah, now it's working as expected mostly. The last thing I wanted to show you was these curve types. So right now we're using a linear kind of curve, but it's more fun to make it so that it follows a less linear progress, right? So you can use, for example, ease in expo, and what that means is that we're exponentially easing in. So anything that is ease in starts slow and then goes fast. Anything that is ease out starts fast and then goes slow. And anything that is ease in out starts slow, goes fast, and then goes back to slow. So for example, if I go with ease in expo, you'll see that like it's a lot more of a panicky action. It goes.
Oh yeah.
Right. Or maybe it would be more interesting if I do the opposite. Let's try ease out expo. So we'll start fast and then.
Oh, I like that.
I actually prefer that.
Yeah, I do too. It's kind of like in After Effects, how you have those settings for animation. That's cool. I didn't know you could get that.
Exactly. We even have like ease in bounce, which is also, or ease out bounce, I think is kind of more fun. So I have something like this.
Oh, that's cool. So
it has like a nice little bouncy effect. Like,
that's cool. Nice.
I don't know how good the frame rate is here, because maybe like the streaming is making it a bit choppy, and you might not.
Right now it's looking okay for me. I don't know. Hopefully everybody else it looks nice. But hopefully the recording.
This last one is the elastic effect.
Oh, that's cool too.
So anyway, I think with this I covered like most of the stuff I wanted to show. I don't know if you have any questions, if you want me to dive into anything specific.
Yeah, I mean, I at this point we can open it up if anybody in the audience has any questions. Feel free to raise your hand and ask away. I'm definitely going to be diving in and watching this and playing along and just redoing everything you just did. That's what I didn't want to push my computer, because if I did it alongside you, I would probably crash everything with Discord and OBS and running Decentraland.
Right. Yes, that happens.
Oh, but you said you will be doing more videos and stuff and having them up soon?
Yes. I plan on making a couple of tutorial videos. Hopefully, I'll be explaining things in a more orderly way, because I know that sometimes I've been a bit.
Oh, this is fun! I love this.
Between parts of the UI. But yeah.
No, I enjoy the zigzagging. It's fun to see.
Those a lot more easy to follow.
No, it's great. And the one that you initially showed us with the boat and all those samples, is that another already tutorial, or where is that just an example scene?
No, it's not uploaded as an example scene. I definitely want to have that one uploaded with the example scenes in studio.central.org. I think it's a great one to include there, but not just yet.
Oh, cool.
So if you I guess that many of you already know this page, but if you don't, this is the go-to place for examples for SDK7. We used to have the awesome repository, which was, it was a very nice place for examples, but it was also less friendly. Like it was, it was GitHub based, and this is like a lot more approachable and nice. And yeah, we've been gradually loading the old examples we had there into SDK7, migrating them and including them here. And sooner or later, we're gonna have this one I just showed with about as one of these here as well.
No, love it. Yeah, very cool. We'll dive into that as well. I usually just go back and forth whenever I have any free time and dive into all the goodies that you guys have created. But yeah, oh, we have a thank you from KJ. Thank you for joining us, KJ.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure having you.
Yeah, and thanks so much again, Nico. This has been awesome. And just for the great overview and seeing your workflow. And I definitely want to dive in. I think the best way to, if anybody in the audience is newer, just dive in. And this recording will be up probably end of day or early tomorrow. And just going over everything he just did. And then you'll kind of start understanding the process and giving yourself little challenges, right? And like, okay, I'm going to make a little haunted house and, make the ghost do the, that would be like, especially for Halloween right now, I'm thinking of fun little challenges you can give yourself based on all the ones that are pre-existing and what you just showcased and stuff. But no, exciting to see all these new updates. Is there anything else coming up that we should look forward to?
So soon we're going to start on working on more possibilities for small items.
Nice.
One of the big things missing is you can't do streaming of videos. So we're going to work on that one. And we're going to try to also have things like playing animations with the avatar or teleporting the avatar. All things that weren't possible in the old builder, but that really we don't have anything preventing us from doing those things now with the new editor.
Yeah, I think streaming is huge. Yeah, once that's made easy again. And is it going to be similar process to SDK6 or a little bit easier or the same pretty much?
Pretty much the same. You will have to configure these fields as parts of components. So that may be slightly less obvious, but it won't be any harder than just pasting a URL in a field that says URL, basically.
Nice.
And we would just have like a smart item that is like the video player. You just have to, open the component that has to do with the video player and paste the URL there.
Oh, exciting. Oh, can't wait to play with that when that's out. Well, yeah, if anyone else has any questions, I'll give you another last chance to join us. If not, thank you once again, Nico. This is great, and always welcome you back anytime. Please, if you have any other cool examples, it's fun just to watch your flow and especially with the new tools, it's always good to just, even if it's similar or the same thing, it's just fun to go. The more you repeat it, the more everything becomes more familiar and more fun to build with once it's more autopilot, right? Especially for the new builders.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think I don't know if you have any last minute things you want to say. If not, we'll call it a day, and hopefully you'll come back soon.
Just thanks. I really appreciate you, building this space and coordinating everything. And and thanks to everyone who came here. I'm happy to keep coming to these whenever there's something valuable to share.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and look out for next week we actually have Malloy coming back on Monday. He's going to be doing a wearable for Halloween. So hopefully you guys can all join us. That should be a fun one. I'm sure it'll be a long, fun one. So come with snacks, coffee, tea, drinks. So I'll be putting more details on that here in the next day or so. But yeah, it should be fun. I think I'm going to give myself a challenge of doing a haunted house version of what you just showcased, Nico, and then I'll be ready for Malloy's next session. Awesome. Okay, well, with that, I'll end it, and thanks everyone. Until next time. Bye.
Thanks everyone.